associate with. You don't share that opinion.
Well, I don't, because for one thing, I don't think that the vote is a pure expression of the people at any given time anyway. The vote is much too crude an instrument to measure what real feelings are in the country. Moreover, politics is extraordinarily complex and dialectical and contradictory. For example, Nixon could get in and get in on a pro-war policy and be the man to make the peace, precisely because he's a Republican, and that's long been a theory of mine, that it's the Democrats who start the wars and the Republicans who finish them. Mainly because the Democrats always have to prove that they're not communists, so they always have to be very militant against the communists. The Republicans don't have to prove that, so they can make peace with the communists. But if you look at the last few wars, that's how they've gone.
You regret that?
No, I think it's part of the pleasurable comedy of politics, you see. But, I don't take politicians seriously except as adventurers. I think they're splendid fellows as adventurers, and I admire many of their qualities. I admire their ability to move from idea to idea and bed to bed. That they're exceptional.
Well, you say that the Democrats are always feeling the necessity to prove that they're not communists, but are you glad that they're not communists?
Am I glad they're not communists?
Yeah.
I detest communism. I detest it much more than you do because I know much more about it. I mean, I've read, for instance, I read Marx. You know, studied him. I spent 3 months studying him. I love Marx, you see. I just detest communism because it betrayed Marx. This is the way you might detest some awful Christian sect that had completely betrayed Christ, you know.
Yeah, I certainly understand what you're talking about, but it is, of course, true that the typical communist who lives, let's say, on the other side of the Iron Curtain would be much less frightened by a Mailer administration than, say, by a Buckley administration.
No, I think
so
they can comprehend.
As far as they are concerned, I think they would probably consider the people I support as more relevantly anti-communist than people you support. The last time you were heard of on the political ramparts was on a committee on being friends for Castro, for a fair play for Castro committee.
I still am all for Castro. I think he's a remarkable man. Let me just say that I think that the communists would probably, well, I can't pretend they would ever be least but happy with you. They would feel a certain security, which is they would feel that they would have some idea of what you might be about to do next. They couldn't ever feel that with me. I love the way we're treating each other as world leaders. You see, I'm not the only narcissist in the house.
No, you always told me to respect your metaphors, which I'm just doing.
And, I'm glad that we're beginning to find some conjunction of discourse. I'm beginning to, well, let it go at that. But no, for instance, I like to keep a certain freedom, a certain liberty to look at the lineaments of major figures. For instance, just until the strike started in France, as of a week ago, I was saying I thought the two greatest political figures in the world today were Fidel Castro and Charles de Gaulle. Now, I think I may still be able to say that a week from now, because I think, so far, I think de Gaulle's been acting sort of I think he's the world's greatest living conservative. You know, I think he's a remarkable man. I'm tremendously fond of him. I have great respect for him. I have great respect for Castro. The point is that men's, you know, it's the way one can have a great respect for saints and generals, for criminals and cops. You know, such a thing as a great cop and such a thing as a great criminal. And the way I work, it's very hard to explain this to people, but I don't think in categories. I think rather, I try to think in this way, that the world is better off if every so-called type in the world is better. In other words, it's a better world when the cops get better and the criminals get better. It's a poorer world when the cops are dull and the criminals are dull. In other words, as an existentialist, what I believe is what really is important at a moment is how much life there is, how much psychic life, how much spiritual life, how much physical life.
Yeah, but I think we better stop and rescue that from banality.
Please do, because I can't see what the banality is, and you don't want this old horse to walk over the cliff.
What it is that decides what makes, for instance, a good criminal class. For instance, we don't...
imagination, vitality,
brilliance.
Instance,
we might say that Hitler showed extraordinary imagination when you consider the scale in which he undertook genocide.
He was absolutely untrue to his own ideas. He betrayed his own ideas and led the world
This is to introduce another element. Presumably the ideas of the criminal, whether the criminal is a mass murderer or an arson or a thief, is to perfect his craft.
Well,
so if you're asking for better criminal, I think you better make it clear what it is.
Let me say that I obviously am not going to carry this to every ridiculous extreme. A mass murderer. Well, a mass murderer is not necessarily a criminal. You know, one of the best remarks that Marx ever made, and I do recommend him for your reading, or maybe this was Engels, in fact, is that...
You asking me?
Oh, no, sir, no. If you know the answer, though, I'll be in your service. Is that quantity changes quality. You see, a man who kills one man may be moral or immoral. We can't know. We have to know intimately what happened. Generally, the assumption is that he was immoral, grievously immoral. At the very least, we know that he has changed his life so profoundly, and that he is now so much, if you believe in an immortal soul, as I do, which you can gain or lose, that he has so endangered his soul that we cannot look upon his condition as a light one, and I would not presume to judge him too quickly. A man who murders 4 or 5 people is already a man of an altogether different sort. A man who murders millions is a man who defies our conception of what it is to be a man. And so for that reason, I would be perfectly willing to let my hypothesis dwindle and die long before we get to the man who kills 3 or 4 people. You see, we have to be allowed a little wit when we speak of these matters.
How long is long before you kill 3 or 4 people?
One. Once a philosopher,
That's
twice a
the
pervert. That's the key to keep in mind.
I don't promise to keep it in mind. I promise to keep in mind that you keep it in mind.
Well, actually, it's not mine. It's Voltaire's.
Yeah. Well, your notion then that the improvement of people in categories is something which you as an artist desire, and you do not or do relate this to your position as a leftist.
Well, to be honest, I'm a left conservative, and since that's an odd category to say the least, I don't think of myself as a leftist anymore. I think of myself as a left conservative. There are places where trees are quite as important as people. There are places where you have to draw the line. We have to say, well, maybe it may even be better that a few people go hungry, you see, than that everyone have banal food. Which is after all part of the problem, I think, of the modern temper, which is, how do we solve all this? And
it makes no difference to you, as far as I can understand, what is the effect of an individual's regime on the people that he rules, so much as it makes a difference what is the style by which he rules. For instance, we know that the flight from Cuba is on the scale of the flight from Hitler, larger, as a matter of fact, as a matter of percentage of the national population. We know that conventional and unconventional freedoms don't exist, including certain freedoms that you profess yourself, I'm sure convincingly, as attached to. And yet you admire Castro. What is it about Castro that you find so admirable? And how is it that you permit him to defy your twice a pervert rule, since he's killed twice times 1,000 people?
Oh, well, look, all government leaders kill people. I mean, that you take for granted.
Not all.
Bill, excuse me, Mr. Buckley, we cannot mix these categories. If we're talking about murderers, I say I draw the line at once philosopher, twice pervert. You don't talk about governments. Governments kill one way or another. They kill in all sorts of ways. I mean, if we get into, we can talk about how people get killed in America. Now, we might part company on it. You might say that they die because they get into automobile accidents. Ralph Nader might say they die because there's been a systematic lack of effort to design cars properly to protect the people who drive them. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
I could say that people die in New York City at an incredible rate of lung cancer because the air in the city is no longer fit to breathe. You might say, well, that's part of the 20th century. I might say it's part of the greed and blindness of the American capitalist system.
Yeah, but I think that there's an obvious distinction here that if it escapes you or oughtn't to, which is that one has to distinguish between the quality of the act of somebody who kills somebody in an effort to insist that a society oblige his views of how it ought to proceed.